so let me give us 30 more seconds. No, it's actually 6:31, so I'm going to get started now. All right, I'm calling to order a meeting of the advisory committee. It's Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 at 6:31 p.m. And on our agenda this evening, we'll be hearing from our Conservation Commission, Economic Development Committee, Planning Board and Board of Appeals, and then we'll also get a brief overview of the Planning Board sponsored articles for annual town meeting. I did want to give you all a heads up that I got an email shortly before dinner time from Eric Nayland, who is the chair of the Economic Development Committee, and he said he might be running late. So Erica Uriarty might be able to pitch hit for him, but we'll get to that when we get there. All right, so why don't we begin? I see we have the chair of our Conservation Commission and our Conservation Administrator, Rebecca Longwall. So do you want to say anything before I share my screen with the budget?
No, I think we can get right into it, Brian. I will say unanimously as a commission, just being aware of everything going on in the world, in the state, in the town, we endeavor to keep everything flat or to cut this year. But other than that, I think you can get right into it.
Okay. And I did want to thank Rebecca for recirculating the PowerPoint that she had put together. I think it was maybe a year or so ago to kind of give an overview of what the Conservation Commission does, because as you know, we have some new members of the advisory committee. So just give me 1 second and I will share my screen.
Thank you.
All right, can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if Rebecca or Brian wants to handle this.
Rebecca does the lion's share of the work, so I'm gonna let her go ahead and explain this if possible.
I am quickly going to apologize if I'm leaning close. It's because I am on my phone. I was having a technical difficulty. So I'm just going to walk through. Well, Brian, would you prefer if I walk through the line items in particular and just go over our notes and justification, or would advisory prefer to walk through it and pose questions if they have any? I'm just trying to think of the best way to approach this.
Yeah, so I think we can go line by line, and since you're on your phone, it's probably hard for you to see, but I can just tell you what we're looking at. Oh,
I do have a copy.
Nice.
Waste of paper, but
Brian, is there a way that you can make this a little bit bigger on the screen?
Yeah, I'll try.
We don't need the white space up above, and that first column doesn't have anything to speak of. Just awfully small print. I'm working on a small screen, so. Yeah, that's a little bit, that's so much better. Speaking of getting new glasses. Perfect. That's the basic stuff, right?
yes.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Mm-hmm. So I was just going to say the wages is that's basically just Rebecca, right?
Yes.
Correct. That is our only paid employee at this point.
And that's I think
Those are the regular steps, right?
a step and a COLA is incorporated in there.
Correct.
So if we can actually focus on everything below that,
yeah,
that would be helpful.
So the first line item is the purchase of services. We have kept, as Brian stated, Brian, our chair, everything relatively level, except for I think dues and then the conservation fund, and we'll get to that later. The purchase and services typically funds purchasing services, so contracted services that go beyond our mowing of the Butternut and Bower Springs properties. Sometimes if we have specialized work that that same company does, like invasive species management, we've actually taken that out of purchase and services in the past. We had a tree come down across one of our parking areas and we needed someone to get out and remove it from the property. So that was taken out of purchase and services as well. That also would cover, we're looking to get an assessment of the earthen dams at Bower Springs Conservation Area, along with an ecological assessment of the ponds within the coming fiscal year. So that's where that line item is, or where that number comes from. But we would also be reaching out, as we typically do for best management practices, to a couple companies that offer the same services.
So that's the vernal pool study?
No, ma'am. This is
Maintenance, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm way ahead of you, purchase of services.
Is everyone comfortable with that item?
Yep.
Okay. So the next line item is land maintenance. That is contracted work for the conservation properties, consisting of mowing of fields, stream channel or bank work if there needs to be some clearing done, and which within the coming fiscal year, I do see the need for. And we also use that for, or we have used that for Beaver Solutions replacement of the flow device or portions of the flow device. And again, that's a beaver deceiver so that they can build their dams, and at the same time, we can still have continuous water flow through those areas. Any questions on that item?
So Rebecca, it looks like maybe last year there was some reallocation between land maintenance and purchase of services, but
Yes.
it's about the same total value.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
For moving on to training, we estimated the amount of funds it would take to send each of our commission members to the annual conference or participate in a fundamentals training that MACC, which is the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions, puts on. This is valuable to make sure that our commission members are up on the latest information along with rules and regulations. The vernal pool study, this study can only occur late winter, early spring, and that is basically for fuel, as we will be having volunteers participate in that. Last year, we actually connected with the Minuteman School, and they were willing to do the work, but of course, as we know, the pandemic came on rather quickly, so things were rescheduled. So we're hoping to get that done this spring, though.
Got it.
Advertising is relatively self-explanatory. This is for legal notices for town projects and events that the Conservation Commission holds. So we're still required to file orders of conditions and notices of intent when work is within jurisdictional area. Even though it sounds a little redundant, we still have to put a legal notice out and file with DEP as well.
Rebecca, I just realized that before you started, you mentioned that there were a couple of things that were different this year. And
Yes.
based on the budget we're looking at, it looks like all of those numbers, the numbers from FY21 to the request in FY22 are the same. So maybe we could just quickly go back and you could tell us what you have on your sheet, because I just want to make sure we're working from the same numbers. So for
Sure.
purchase services, we have $7,000 request.
Yep.
For land maintenance, we have a $7,000 request.
Yes.
For training, we have an $800 request.
Yep.
Vernal pool, 150.
Okay, I have 100
Yeah.
on my sheet for that.
Okay, so that we can make that change on our end.
Well, Brian, while you're looking at that, can you just confirm that dues are at 800 and not 750 for FY22?
They're at 750.
Okay, so that was the adjustment then.
Okay, so you brought vernal pool study down to 100 and put dues up to 800.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, and while we're talking about the amounts, let me just quickly go down and we can make sure we've got the numbers right. So I'm going to change vernal pool to 100.
Okay.
And I'm going to change dues to 800.
Yes.
But then advertising is 100, supplies
Yep.
is 400,
Yep.
in-state travel is 200.
Yep.
Land capital improvement is 1,000.
Yes.
Equipment is 500. And conservation fund is 500.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. Sorry. So to
Thank
go
you.
back, I think
I couldn't see actually your screen. Like I said, it's a smaller screen on my side, but.
all right. So you were just finishing up with advertising, I think, and about to talk about supplies.
Yes, so for advertising, it's the legal notices and or associated ads in the paper for various events. At times, we are lucky that the editor does put them in for free if they're volunteer events. But there are some circumstances where we do need to cover the cost. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yep.
The next item is in-state travel. So this is mileage to and from site visits, training, field work, in my own personal vehicle. I don't have a town vehicle, so this offsets that for the mileage. It is also
I think you
used-
skipped over supplies.
Oh, excuse me, I did. So supplies, I apologize. That's for office supplies. So I have a printer in my office, which we typically use for trail sign updates or other just office related documentation. Additionally, lamination sheets associated with updating signage. And of course, I probably already mentioned it, but ink and your typical office supplies related to just pens and such.
Yep.
But minimal compared to the signage.
Okay. You want to jump down to dues?
Sure. So the dues are related to MACC, which I previously mentioned. Each of the commission members are a member of MACC, along with myself. We are also a member of the Massachusetts Society of Municipal Conservation Professionals, and those dues therefore break up into those memberships. Land capital improvement. This is also related to beaver activity or the more regular or larger actually, I want to back up. So the land maintenance includes the annual inspections of an annual assessment, clearing of the beaver flow device infrastructure. The land capital improvement is for those repairs and replacements of those flow devices.
Can I ask a
Yep.
idiosyncratic question about beaver dams in Bolton?
Sure.
So do those have sort of like a formally protected status? Like people shouldn't really be getting near them, or what's the deal with that?
The dams or the beavers?
The dams themselves, like for example, I'm familiar with the one at Vaughan Hill. And I just noticed like there's signage kind of going into the place, but I've never really paid attention to whether there's signs right by the beaver dams themselves.
Sure. So on Vaughan Hill, that one, the signage was put up prior to my time actually regarding stay away from the beavers or don't bother them, don't disturb the dams. You actually need a permit to trap, which ultimately means killing a beaver because you can't move wildlife within the state of Massachusetts from one place to another. You can also install a flow device, which is what we do, or you can get a permit to reach a dam. So where there's not a public health or safety threat, like on our conservation properties, we typically like to install the flow devices, which allow for them to exist while still not negatively impacting the resource areas. But in terms of altering beaver infrastructure, we'll term it in general, you should be getting a permit before you even touch it. Does
Got it.
that answer?
Yeah, no,
question?
that's helpful. Thanks.
Yep. The next item, equipment. So these funds are used typically for repair or maintenance of equipment used for trail work. It also is used for the equipment we use for land maintenance and stewardship. So whether it's, again, posting signage, just chainsaw tune-ups or weed whacker tune-ups with the brush hog or fuel, that's what that line item is typically used for. And then the conservation fund. So just a brief on the conservation fund, because I know it's a question, a question that typically comes up each year, excuse me. This fund is used, well, this line item we've used to contribute to the conservation fund, which can only be used for land acquisition or towards land acquisition. So under the current project that we're hopefully finishing within the next month or two, if not weeks, is the Taggart acquisition project, which the commission allowed the use of what was existing in the conservation fund. So the reason why we increased that to $500 from in the past, if you look historically, is because we'd like to be able to contribute some back to that. And how we've done that is we've turned it over at the end of the year to the conservation fund from this line item.
So it sounds like the existing conservation fund bank account is going to be likely zeroed out through the Taggart project.
Yes.
And remind me again, what is the balance right now?
The balance right now is, I believe, 32,000 or just around there. I apologize, I don't have the exact number in my head.
That sounds about right in terms of the magnitude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen as long as everybody. So the bottom line number we have is a request of $79,948. I don't know if folks have questions, but I thought we could all see each other a little bit better now. Any
And
questions?
the major increase there is the step increase, right?
The step in the COLA, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Well, if there are no questions, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the Conservation Commission budget?
I motion that.
Okay,
I'll second.
great. Roll call. Anne,
Yes,
Bob,
Aye.
Craig,
Aye.
Omid,
Aye.
and Brian is a yes as well. Okay,
Very much.
great. Thank you both. Good to see you both. Thanks, Brian, for joining.
No, thank you. Good luck with everything, guys.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up, we're supposed to be hearing from Eric on the Economic Development Committee budget, but I will just go ahead and share that while we're waiting for him because it's a pretty straightforward budget. Hold on. And Jenny, I don't know if you're listening, but if there's a way for you to give Erica a heads up that we're running kind of ahead of schedule because Eric is, yeah, that'd be great. Okay, so can everybody see this right here?
Yep.
So as you can see, I mean, I can talk a little bit about this budget just because Eric, or probably Anne or Craig could talk about it too, because Eric's presented the same budget for a number of years. They do usually come pretty close to using the full $1,000. And one of the big expenses has been they do like an economic development breakfast where they invite business owners, local political leaders, chambers of commerce. So I think there's some expense related to that. And then I think that they also have some expenses related to the backyard Bolton farmers market. But I think some of those also come from the Agricultural Commission. The actuals for FY 2020, Nanachka, you would probably know if there's anything that's not reflected on this, or whether the fact that it's zero is just
They didn't
like,
spend anything.
okay. Got it.
I'm sure because of COVID, nothing was happening.
Yeah.
You can hardly have those.
Yeah, because
business-
usually their big breakfast is in May. And so that would have been May 2020 would have been at the end of FY 20. So that expense
For
would show up on this.
This
call.
committee, I was a member of the economical committee, and that's what happened because of because of COVID. They didn't have any breakfast. They didn't have their meeting.
Got it. Oh, I see. Looks like Eric. Well, there's Erica, and it looks like Eric is also trying to connect at the moment. Erica, did you want to say anything about the Economic Development Committee budget?
Sure. So yes, we did not have our annual business breakfast that we, usually have. So that definitely played into it. And then also we typically print the EDC brochures, the maps, and we didn't do that this year either. So I think those two things played a big part as to why we didn't spend the money.
Okay.
This is Eric. I'm actually here now.
Hi, Eric.
Hey.
Sorry, go ahead if you want to. We were just talking about it, but your request for FY22 is $1,000, and we were talking about how the spend in 2020 was zero.
Yeah. Well, so one of the reasons is I pay for things and have them vote to reimburse me, but I never actually follow through and end up just paying out of my pocket a lot. But I do have for 21, I think for this year, I have $200 that I need to get reimbursed. So that's coming through. And I think we will try to squeeze in printing of the brochure. So that'll be probably another $300 for 21.
Yep.
But without having the breakfast, it'll be at about 500 in April.
Right. But you're obviously hoping to have the breakfast in May of 2022. So
yeah. And if we're printing out brochures this year, you could probably reduce it to like 750, I think, or 700. Just if you're looking to have it be balanced of what we're spending versus taking, just so make sure we don't keep on over budgeting. That would probably be fun. Especially if we print out brochures this year, we probably won't need them next year. So
yeah, I mean, I would be fine to reduce this to 750 as long as you're submitting for reimbursement for yourself.
Yeah, I do it every year.
Yeah.
I have the board, agree on the charges for marketing and stuff, and then I just never do it. It's my donation to the town, I guess.
Any other questions from the rest of the committee?
Very straightforward. I have no questions.
All right, so why don't we reduce it to 750 if somebody wants to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
And
I'll second.
I second that.
great. Roll call. Anne,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Craig,
Aye.
Omid,
Aye.
and Brian is yes as well. All right, Nanachka, you got that right? Down to 750?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Eric. And when FY23 comes around, don't be shy about asking for a little bit more if you need it.
Yeah, once things get settled out and we know what we can do or not.
Yep.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks. So now next up, we've got the Planning Board and the Board of Appeals, followed by an overview of the Planning Board articles. So Erica.
Hi, Brian.
Hi.
Good evening, advisory.
Oh,
Does everybody know Erica?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks like you have some new members. I met Omid because he used to be on EDC. But yeah. All right. Do you want me to walk you through the planning department budget?
Yeah, let me just share the screen. All right, can you see that?
I can. Okay, so for FY22, for the wages, we have $66,178. And then for purchase of services, the line item is $1,200. Advertising,
Can I actually
Yeah.
ask about the wages real quick?
sure.
So is that line subject to change based on like you?
Who they end up hiring?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, depending on, the person that they hire. I assume based on their experience, they'll either keep it at that level, it may go down. I know there's a pay range for the position, so.
Okay. I just I didn't know whether anybody had a more concrete idea of like who that person might be or what they would be coming in at, but it sounds
Not
like
yet.
just leave it as is for now.
Yeah, not yet. I think they will before town meeting. I think we could nail that down in the next couple of weeks, maybe by March. So
Okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
no problem. And feel free to stop me at any time to talk about any of these items. So purchase of services, $1,200, advertising, $250, supplies, $200. In-state travel is $400, and obviously that's dependent on COVID and if meetings become in person again. Dues, $1,800, and then $400 for meetings. And again, that sort of is dependent on COVID and how things play out. Because a lot of the webinars that they're doing now are free, which is lovely. But that could change again. So.
Could you say a little bit more about what's covered under purchase of services?
Sure. So I can give you examples from the previous fiscal year. So the majority of that money was actually spent through the master planning process with the steering committee. We had put out a townwide survey. So that money was used to create an account with SurveyMonkey and then to also print out the survey for the newspaper. So that's where that was covered last fiscal year.
Yeah.
But it could be used for other things other than that, obviously. That's just one example. In the past, we've used it to use our peer reviewer consultant, our engineering consultant, to review any updates, revisions we make to our rules and regulations. We've used it in the past to hire a company to update our zoning map. So it's very helpful. It can be used for all sorts of different tasks. And I would say typically we do use it. So.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions for Erica about this one? And since we've got it up, why don't you just quickly go through the appeals board budget?
Sure, that one's really simple. It's $200, and essentially it's for advertising for public hearings.
Yep. Okay, well, my feeling is that although the wages may be subject to change before the end of annual town meeting, I'd rather vote on both of these tonight. And if we have to reopen this, we can later, but for now, if somebody wanted to make a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget as submitted.
Second that.
Right. Bob,
aye.
Omid,
Aye.
Craig,
Aye.
and Anne,
Aye.
and myself is yes too. Okay. And then, wow.
That was both planning and appeals, right?
Yes. As submitted. And so, Erica, we got the copy of the planning board articles that might be sponsored at annual town meeting. I
Sure,
don't think
yeah.
everybody's had a chance. I certainly haven't had a chance to read through them in detail. So rather than sharing the screen with them, maybe you could just talk through and tell us what we're looking at.
Yeah, sure. If you don't mind, actually, I may just pull it up on my computer because it's helpful for me as I'm talking through it to look at it.
Oh yeah, you know what? I can.
So if you don't
I've
mind,
got it
I'm
right
just gonna-
here. I've got it.
Oh,
right
okay.
Here. I can do it. Yeah.
I'm a visual person, so it's just helpful to see what I'm reviewing. All right. So there's just a handful of planning board articles this year, a couple of zoning, and then a couple of general for road acceptance of a couple of different projects. So the first one here that we're looking at is to update our accessory apartment bylaw. So currently, when you look at that bylaw, we only allow for accessory apartments as of right in existing or proposed homes. They have to be attached. So, and Brian, you've been very much part of the process of updating our housing production plan. And it's one of the strategies that we've identified for providing affordable, diverse housing in town is to provide for detached accessory apartments to give residents that additional flexibility if they want to have, their in-laws live on their property, if they have a college student that wants to have their own apartment, if it's, a young professional starting out, they can't afford really to have their own place. They can still live at home, but have that sense of sort of independence. So that's the first article, is to require or allow for detached accessory apartments through the special permit process. So that would be one thing that's different from the accessory apartment bylaw we have now, is that for detached, it would require a special permit. So it would be a regulated use from that perspective.
Erica, just wanted to make a quick note about, and maybe everybody knows this and it's obvious, but maybe for viewers at home, when they're reading this document, the things that are underlined are new, right? And then things that are italicized would be deletions. Is that how that works?
That is correct. So granted, the advisory hasn't had a chance to really look at this, so it could be a little bit confusing. So what I did was, or the planning board did was, we took the existing bylaw, and there are some things that, some requirements in there now for accessory apartments, attached accessory apartments that would apply to both attached and detached. So we essentially deleted it from the bylaw, moved those items up to the front of the bylaw. And then, so as you scroll down, it'll become clearer. So then the top part applies to both attached, detached, then you have the requirements for attached, and then the requirements for detached.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the detached requirements. And then obviously we're adding a definition for accessory apartment. We don't have that currently in our zoning bylaw, so that's good to include.
I see there's a question from Bob Zakansky.
Hi, it's not clear to me either for attached or detached how the septic system plays into this. You're still going by the number of bedrooms, is that right?
That is correct. So they would still have to meet all Title V requirements. So they would have to get a special permit from the planning board, but with that said, that would still require a review from Board of Health when they apply for their building permit. So if it's found that they need to make upgrades to their septic system, they'll have to do that. So that does get covered through the whole process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions about that article?
Are there any? Oh, sorry. Just one quick question. Any restrictions? Maybe it's in the details here on spacing like from the main residence or anything like that?
No, we do not have requirements for the spacing from the main residence. We have requirements regarding like the square footage of the detached structure, how it needs to sort of fit into the character of the residential neighborhood. It has to still be incidental to the property. It can't overwhelm the primary residence. We talk about parking, having to meet building code requirements. And then you have to remember, it is a special permit process. So that does give the planning board some wiggle room to add in other requirements and safeguards to make sure that, it's appropriate for the property and for the neighborhood. So.
And how did you land on the 1,200 square feet?
That's actually, that's a great question. We looked at numerous bylaws from other communities, and 1,200 square feet, and I also spoke to various developers about this, and 1,200 square feet tended to be the maximum in many of the communities we looked at. And in speaking with the developers, their opinion was 1,200 square feet is more than sufficient for an accessory apartment. And at the same time, we also want to make sure that, like I said, the detached accessory apartments remain incidental to the primary. So that's, taking all of those things into consideration, we felt the 1,200, was an appropriate number.
So if I'm understanding this, if somebody had a 2,000 square foot primary, then the gross heated floor space for their accessory could be no greater than 1,000.
That's correct. And again, that's to make sure that that detached accessory apartment remains secondary accessory. So.
Yep.
And if, and we also wanted to build in some flexibility here. So if you look at the next requirement, it talks about grandfathered structures. So if someone in town has a structure that was built prior to this, if this bylaw passes, that's, let's say 1,500 square feet, and they'd like to use it as an accessory apartment, we don't want to just count that out. So we want to give them an opportunity to make a case before the board that, look, this is still incidental. I have this structure. We'd like to be able to use it for this purpose. So the board can, in those situations, make a judgment call. Okay, yes, that's appropriate use for that particular structure. We'll grant you the special permit. But that's for only grandfathered, structures. That wouldn't be for new.
Got it. Anne, did you have a question?
No, that's fine. I figured it out. No big deal.
Okay. So is the next substantive one that you want to cover, is it the signs, temporary signs?
Sure. So that would be the next zoning article. And this one's really simple. This has to do with temporary signs, really referring to real estate signs that you see, sprinkled throughout town when properties go for sale. Currently, the bylaw states that you can't use or place the word sold over the sign. So this was brought to the planning board's attention that, realtors were using other words besides sold to sort of get around that requirement. And the understanding from the planning board is that this was initially put in there to limit the amount of time that a real estate sign is put up. So the board, in, deliberating about this particular article, said, well, we actually like to see the word sold on these signs because it gives us sort of an indicator of what the market's doing. So we have no problem with that. But we do think that the intent should remain, if we want to limit the amount of time that these signs are up, let's really get, put some language in there that speaks directly to that. So they updated it with, the sign shall be removed within 14 days after a closing date of sale.
Got it. Interesting. Okay, outdoor lighting.
Yeah, so this this outdoor lighting bylaw will apply to business and industrial properties. So it won't apply to the residential district, single family homes. It doesn't apply to street lights or traffic lights. The planning board has decided not to apply it to municipal properties, athletic fields. Obviously, it won't apply to seasonal holiday lighting. And And so really the intent of this bylaw is to provide further guidance to the planning board and other boards that are permit granting authority boards, in addition to the design review criteria. If you look at section 250-23G of the zoning bylaw, it outlines design review. And a part of that does talk about lighting, but it's very limited in its regulation. So this is really to supplement that. And it provides, now it literally states, you need to submit a photometric plan or a lighting plan, and you need to provide all of these classifications and calculations so that we can better understand what the lighting will look like, with the proposed project. So that's really the intent here.
I see a question from Bob Zakansky.
Is this really a problem?
No, it's not a problem. It's really more about ensuring that in the future, if we had new projects come before the board, that we maintain the dark sky of Bolton, and that will help the board do that. So it's really maintaining what our nighttime looks like now. So again, it's just a supplement to the design review criteria. And we had also, just to sort of back up to, as we were developing this bylaw, again, we looked at numerous other communities and what they required for outdoor lighting. This is very similar to what they do in Lancaster. And towards the end of our sort of review process, we did have a lighting expert from Harvard look through this. And a lot of these edits that you see now in red were from him. And these are things that he sees standard in a lot of communities and things that he looks at when he reviews photometric plans. So I think this is, I don't think it's over regulation. I think it's just to maintain, what our intent is with design review.
Erica, it looks like photometric is misspelled on.
It could very well be. I caught that on a different version. This might be an older version. Yeah, it's supposed to be an E. Yeah.
I have a couple questions. One of them is just like, this is all Greek to me, and I'm wondering for like smaller businesses, is it going to be burdensome to be able to supply a photometric plan? And I realize like the business might be different from the property owner, and so I know you have people on the planning board that are interested in business development, all that sort of stuff as well. So I'm wondering, was that angle discussed at all? And you guys
It was like not to in great depth, but it was discussed as we were putting this together. And my understanding is that when you purchase the light fixtures, when you purchase the lamps, oftentimes the manufacturer or the company that you're buying it from will provide you with the photometric plan. So there may be some cost involved, but I think a lot of this, this information they can just obtain from the manufacturer or the company. So I personally don't think this is a huge lift, for a business owner. And this wouldn't apply to existing businesses. If you go to the top under exemptions, it would only be for future businesses. And again, it's just to also create some similarity in outdoor lighting. Some of those requirements, I know it sounds Greek, but when you really dive into it, it kind of makes sense that you require it because it provides consistency from property to property. You end up having lighting that's similar in color. You have lighting that's in similar heights. It gives you it's also for safety purposes. For example, like the color rendering index that allows the lighting that has a higher CRI can render an object more clearly. So in a parking lot that comes into play, you obviously want to be able to at night see who's in the parking lot. So, it may seem burdensome, but I think there's a lot of added value with these requirements. So
I see there's a question from Omid.
I think when you were going through, I saw that the single family, and then we're all exempt from it.
That's correct.
That answered my question.
Okay, should we keep moving on to the last couple?
So the acceptance of Houghton Farm Lane. Houghton Farm subdivision is located off of Sugar Road. It's a 15 lot subdivision. There are 14 houses off of the cul-de-sac. They did their final paving last fall, and they're ready for road acceptance. So, you know, through that process of constructing the road, we've had our peer review consultant, our engineering consultant out there doing inspections. They have essentially signed off. They're in the process of reviewing the as-built plan for the road. So, you know, I don't expect, you know, as long as they continue with the process, the developer, and meeting all the requirements, you know, I don't, you know, I foresee this article, you know, being recommended for the warrant. So.
Sorry, I apologize. I just noticed that we have a question from Stan Wysocki.
Yeah, my apologies. I clicked at the last moment. Just going back to the previous one with the lighting. It seems to me that bylaw is overly detailed. And there's a lot of minutia in that bylaw. Wouldn't it be better that some of that possibly might be pulled out and put into rules and regulations?
Yeah, that's a great comment. Certainly, you know, particularly the details for the photometric plan, that certainly could be put into a rules and regulations. So I'll bring that up to the board, and that's
yeah,
definitely something we could do.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that,
Yeah.
you know, with all that detail, the fact that if you want to change something, you've got to go back to a town meeting, whereas rules and regs can be done outside.
Sure, that's a great point.
It probably stands a better chance at town meeting if it's not as detailed,
Yeah.
because there's less opportunity to object.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I see we have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. Because we've had other planning board bylaws that have been very detailed and they have not succeeded. So,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes less is more.
If there's any town that's going to argue about like degrees Kelvin, it's probably a Bolton town meeting. I see a question from Omid.
Yeah, it's about the new road. It's just a question. Does our town have any requirement for the new road to have like so if they're building a new road and new houses there and stuff, there's any requirement to reduce like hazardous or energy disruption techniques? For example, like some towns require you if you build a new road and new houses, you have to have like in-ground wiring or something. So like during like a bad weather stuff is not going to impact those residents. Obviously, it's hard to do with the existing houses and road, but it's easier to do in the roads that are being built. Does Bolton have any requirement like that, or any say like some give like tax breaks to companies that do those things to reduce like the future work that town has to do to upkeep the roads and energy and everything else that's going through those areas?
That's a great question. So currently, the document that we use, you know, in determining whether or not a road is fit for road acceptance is Bolton subdivision rules and regulations. And that's a document that's pretty dynamic. The planning board consistently updates it based on past experience, how we can improve it. And in terms of energy usage or reducing, you know, the town's requirements for maintenance or for any of those number of reasons, you know, that's something that the planning board could look at. Actually, it's just funny that you mentioned that, because we're looking at potentially updating the rules and regulations this year. So that's something I can mention to the board. And that's really where that would, you know, those types of requirements I believe would go. And I don't think we have those requirements now, but it's something we could look at.
Thanks.
Do you want to touch briefly on the final one, Erica?
So this is a very similar article for Century Mill Estates off of Spectacle Hill Road. There are 3 roads within that development: Mill Pond Road, Cider Circle, and Old Stone Estates. Again, they finished paving last fall, and our engineering consultant has signed off on the construction of the road. They're in the process of finishing their as-built plans, which should be submitted, I believe, by next week. So again, they're on the path for road acceptance. They do have quite more outstanding items to complete than Houghton Farm. So the planning board's given them a deadline of February 24th to get everything finished. So tentatively, the planning board has it, you know, as an article, but moving forward, we'll see if they'll be able to meet that deadline.
The tax has been paid?
That was
Not
my question.
No, that's one of the outstanding items.
Right.
So the planning board, you know, in reference to taxes, Andy said that he's agreeable to entering into a tax payment plan, so that the board has, they voted that would be sufficient in meeting that requirement for paying back taxes.
Can I ask a question?
But it has not been executed. That agreement has not been executed yet.
So say that agreement is signed and then the town accepts the road.
Mhm.
What's the incentive to continue to pay?
Yeah,
back
there is
tax?
none beyond, you know, not having the property foreclosed on. That's really the only incentive.
Yeah, I would not be in agreement to allow him to do a tax payment plan. I mean, this has been going on for years now. No, there needs to be some other mechanism to extract what we need to extract from the developer.
I agree with Stan.
Are there any other questions for Erica about these? Erica, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, first of all, am I correct that your time with the town is ending at the end of this month?
I think
Or-
so. We haven't set an end date yet, but that's my.
No, we're not letting her go.
Well,
Sorry.
That's my hope.
the reason I was asking is because I wasn't sure whether we would have the pleasure of your company in the advisory meeting again between now and the time that you leave. And so in case we don't, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you publicly for, like, in the time that I've been on the finance committee, you've been an exemplary employee of the town, not just for advisory purposes, but I think you go above and beyond. You sort of never stop and you put your heart into it. So I'm really going to miss you. I know a ton of people are going to miss you, but
Here.
on making the choice you have.
I appreciate that, Brian. No thank you is necessary, but I appreciate it.
I just wish we could all get together and have a party for you, but
No.
so thanks again.
Well, thank you. And feel free to email me if you have any other questions about the articles. I know I kind of stumbled through them, so feel free to email me.
Okay, great. Thanks so
Okay.
much.
All right, no problem.
Have a good night.
You too. Thanks.
Good night, Erica.
So that covers our substantive agenda. We had a couple, we have some minutes that we can vote on if people have had a chance to review those. And I also wanted to give you a heads up that I'll be circulating a draft of our annual report so that you can all review it before our next meeting, which I believe is the 23rd, right? Is that right, Jenny? We don't have one next Tuesday, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Wait, is next,
maybe-
yes, we don't have one next week. It's the week after.
Okay. So does anyone want to make a motion on the minutes that were submitted?
I move we accept the minutes as submitted.
I second that.
Okay, great. Oh, good night, Bob. Just got that message. All right, so we'll do roll call. Bob,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
Craig,
Aye.
Omid,
Aye.
and Brian is a yes as well. All right, so we'll get those posted and we'll see you in 2 weeks if somebody wants to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
Move.
motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second that.
All right, and everybody just raise your hand if you're in favor. Okay, great. Thanks for joining, Stan. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Bye, Nanochka.
Bye.
Bye,
Take care.
everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good day.